I give a fuck? Why do I give a fuck? Why do I try so hard? Why do I care so much?
Welcome to Why Do I Give a Fuck? A cross-cultural conversation between myself, Diane Tate,
and Johanna Thompson. In these times of great struggle and possible shift, we ask ourselves,
why do we give a fuck about any of it? How does the lens we see the world through impact what we see?
And what do we do about it?
For those of us who couldn't see us, we were damming and we were dancing to our whole little 100.
This is our 100th episode.
We're here.
100. I need more applause. More applause.
We made it a century in podcast moments with each other.
Oh my gosh. 100 episodes just blows me away. I cannot believe it.
It's a lot of time and commitment and a lot of conversation, a lot of building together. Right. So if we're just talking about like in general, what it takes for people as they're developing relationship with each other, what it takes to do that intentional conversations on a weekly basis. And we can actually identify that there's 100 conversations that we've held beyond, more conversations from before we even started doing this, but
right.
Like getting to this place and like, I'm curious to look back at the evolution of our communication and conversation over these 100 episodes with each other, starting from the beginning from us talking about, let's introduce ourselves as we get to know each other more deeply and continue these conversations. And so now we're here. Let's reintroduce ourselves.
Yeah, for those who maybe haven't listened to our first episode or haven't been there in a minute, it's only on audio version for those of you who maybe be watching us on YouTube, because we started this just audio. We weren't sure how this was going to go, and we're all self-taught in terms of using these different platforms and putting these things together. So we started off with just audio. So our first episode, we played these games to kind of get to know her because we knew we needed to introduce ourselves to the world. And, if you really knew me, you would know that X, and we talked about how we identify. And so if you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode, please go back on your audio platforms and find it, because we got some good feedback. People really appreciated the way we kind of introduced ourselves. And I learned a lot about you, and hopefully you learned some about me. The thing I remember the most about was that the question of how do you identify? I got stuck. You remember that? I got totally stuck, especially around the question of ethnicity and how I identify. I can identify all the mom and artist and author and all that stuff, but the ethnicity piece I really stumbled on. Do you remember that? Yeah. I got totally stuck.
I do. I don't specifically remember. I'd have to go back and re-listen to it. I'm trying to think of what. I think that definitely faith was one of the things in that episode that I was just like, trying to like identify how we speak about what our faith and what our belief systems are for that episode. And then just whenever you take a moment, even if it's somebody that you've spent time with, when you take a moment to reflect on how they respond to those questions, that's like very telling also. And so we should ask ourselves that same question on this episode. But I also know you wanted to kind of come into this conversation in a specific way.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about, over 100 episodes, and we knew each other for 3 years before we started doing this. So, but we knew each other in strictly a colleague working relationship. And we had gotten to know each other a little more, I think, just person to person, not necessarily within the boundaries of colleagues, which is what sparked us to want to do this podcast. When I separated from the organization that we were both working for and didn't want our conversations to end. So that's what birthed this podcast to begin with. But I was thinking about what, and I'm not sure I know the answer yet, so I'd have to do a thought process in my own head, but what have I learned from you? What have I learned about myself? What have I learned? How has this podcast over the course of 100 episodes impacted me? And so that was a question I thought would be an interesting.
Well, that's not something you just spring up on somebody.
Well, I sprung up on myself because I was driving up thinking,
to think about this. I don't know.
I know.
Okay. I
Well, it
love
would
that
definitely be
question.
raw thought for sure.
Mhm.
It would definitely be raw thought. But you know, I just, what have I learned about I mean, I don't know. Do you want me to go first?
Please,
And
let's model what it can look like.
okay. So what have I learned
It
about
might take some
myself?
time to think about.
Yes. For your wheels will be
Yeah, my
turning. We'll all see it.
but I also want to be intentional about listening. So I don't want to, so I'm going to
Yeah.
listen to you, and then I
Yeah.
might have to take a pause before I can give an answer.
Okay. Fair
Right.
enough. Fair enough. Yeah, it's all raw thought for me too. So we're learning as we go. But what have I learned about myself, or maybe how have I grown in the past 100 episodes?
Mm.
I think I have gotten more comfortable in speaking into my whiteness and how it manifests through me in my daily life and in my interactions with people that don't look like me, and how in my interactions with people that do look like me. I think I've gotten clearer about that, and maybe not as, I feel like I was very nervous in the early days. I mean, that was one of the intentionalities behind creating this podcast, was that we would model how to have conversations that may sometimes feel a little sticky. And I think I really I struggled with it a little bit more, and I'd be curious to hear if any listeners out there have been with us from the beginning, that maybe they could reflect on whether or not they saw this. But I feel like I struggled a little more, or I maybe tried to explain things away before I even said them. There was a lot of that back and forth in the early days, and I don't think I do that as much now. I feel like my flow is a little bit better than it used to be. I don't second guess myself quite as much. And I do think that has a lot to do with the depth and the deepening of our relationship together, that I am not, and it's funny because we just talked about this going to Charleston, that I was all worried about causing harm. I'm still worried about it, but I'm not as, I don't know. I guess I'm not operating from a place of deep fear about it as much, because I know that, because you and I have had those experiences, and you've been able to say, hey, calling you in, I'm curious, let's talk about
Yeah.
that more. And my head hasn't exploded, or the world hasn't ended, or any of that stuff. So I do think I've grown in that a little. I'd be curious to see if in hearing that, if you could attest to that, or if that resonates with you as being true in your experience.
Okay, so a part of why I was, for anyone who's watching this, you will have seen me as Diane was talking. There was a couple of times where I was like giggling. And so one of the things that I was going to say earlier, and I did it, and I love when the universe does this, is that you explaining. I was just going to say, don't we love Diane explains all of the things? So there's one thing about this podcast that I'm going to say is that if you're unclear about anything, you can be sure that Diane is going to explain things.
Oh, am I the explainer? Oh my
goodness. You are an explainer.
Yeah.
And then I was like trying to figure out, is that a white woman thing? Do they just like really try to like make sure that you clearly understand the explanation? Because I'm always like, okay.
I mean, it very well may be a white woman thing. Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. I mean, so I do know and I don't know, but it's also who you are as far as very detailed oriented. And so one of the things,
it's how my brain works.
Yeah. And it's an intentional decision that I see as we are developing more of a relationship with each other, to make sure that people are understanding your thought process. And I find that interesting, because understanding your thought process, because what I've observed and experienced with you is that you are very conscious of not causing harm.
Yeah.
So that if you're explaining like to folks how it is that you have processed your thought and what you're thinking about something, because you always end it in a lovely way. Well, what do you think about it? Or like, so it's, you're sharing your thought process. So I appreciate that. I think it's becoming more, to your point, open and authentic, and being able to communicate what that thought process is without hesitating as much as you might have in the beginning of our community. Or like I think you might have even explained this to me outside of us having this conversation on the podcast, is that you will think about whether or not you should have or say something to me, or whether or not you're going to bother me Whereas because our relationship and our communication is much more intentional and much more involved, it seems like, and I could be wrong because I don't know how your mind works until you explain it, but it seems like now it's less of that conversation before you actually just have a conversation with me.
Yes.
I'm curious how many folks that don't come from your same tribe do that type of thing. I don't do it, but I also come from a particular background where my environment was very white cultured. You know, I was raised in, you know, an area in California, Marin County, that was predominantly, as I was growing up, it was majority of wealthy Caucasian people. So that is the environment that I've come from. And so my ability to be in communication that seems comfortable is comfortable to me because this is the life I've existed. Surrounded by white people all the time.
Yeah.
Which might be why I'm in Jamaica now. So
You've earned it. You have done your time. Yeah.
But they like to explain a lot of things also. So maybe it's me.
Yeah. It really,
those explanations.
I mean, I'm not adverse to the idea that it's a white woman thing for sure. But I do also know that my brain works like that. I process out loud. Yeah. And it's one of the reasons why I think our stream of consciousness conversations work so well, because that's how my brain works. I am in a constant state of stream of consciousness. And when I process things, you can almost draw the map of where my brain is going as I'm processing it, because it's so, I mean, I could see my travels if I were to draw a map. And, so yeah, I'm a very linear thinker, but I'm also an open, I would say open processor. I don't sit and think and get to the full thought and then share it. It's the way to get to the full thought for me is in the sharing. So that can also, I'm sure that can be very annoying to people.
I mean, it's collective. I do think that women are collective processors in their thought and analysis. I mean, we gather environmental information and then have to make sense of it. So, I imagine that is something that would be integral to all of us. I am curious, though, now that we're having this conversation, did you have an expectation for these conversations or where they would go? Or did you have some type of a need that might have been being filled for you personally? Not like in general of us thinking about, this is a really good thing for us to model what it looks like for people from two totally different perspectives to come together and have a conversation and talk about all the things that are similar, all the things that are different, having the curiosities. But like, did you have a personal intention for our opportunity to conversate with each other, to have a conversation with each other? Conversate is not a word, y'all.
I've heard that it is, so I don't know. When I first heard it, I thought that's not a word, but I've heard that it is, so I don't know. I we'll use it. So,
okay.
A personal intention, I don't, beyond, the impetus behind the thought of having a podcast together with you was bred or was born out of the fact that we weren't going to be working together anymore. And we weren't going to have the opportunity to have those dialogues that we had been having in the years that we've been working together. And so I guess to answer the question, that on some level was, to continue having those dialogues with you. And maybe I don't remember having this thought like cognitively or consciously, but maybe somewhere I thought that they wouldn't continue if we didn't have a reason to have them continue, which maybe was the podcast. So yeah, I don't know exactly how to answer that, except that that's what comes up as a possibility. So
I appreciate that. Now, would we, that's a very curious question. Would we have had a reason to keep checking in? And if you say that, and I'm thinking about how our relationship has evolved, I can imagine that there might have been a lot of times where you were thinking you wanted to reach out to me and then didn't reach out to me.
I'm sure.
In which case,
hello, my name is Perpetual Warrior. Yeah.
So I'm bringing this up to say, is an opportunity for people to think about checking in with, if you want to build relationships with people, just build them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just like reach out. This is a wonderful way for us to do it with intention, because we set a time. And I do think, because we come from different backgrounds, different perspectives, this is actually a good way of modeling what helps build relationships across bridges and across differences. Is like when you actually say, I'm going to spend intentional time no matter what I'm doing. And here I'm coming to this conversation. I'm going to be very fully present in a conversation. I'm going to let it flow, let it go, and see what beautiful relationships blossom out of that. I think that's a very wonderfully restorative practice. If you ask me.
Absolutely. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about how I don't have a very developed skill set for that beyond and irrespective of the fact that we are from different cultures, that I am a white woman trying to engage a Black woman. And we've gone into the whole, I don't want to cause harm, and all of those things. But, when I've become very aware in my adult life, where I grew up out in the middle of kind of nowhere. It was horse country. So lots of farms, and everybody was very spread out. I didn't grow up in a neighborhood where you had neighborhood kids that rode bikes and everybody, let's go up and down the street. And you just became friends because you had proximity to each other. We had nobody around us. And so if we were going to have play dates or whatever, mom always had to drive us somewhere. It wasn't riding your bikes. It wasn't just developing those things. And so I don't know how to do that. I can live around people and never speak to them. And this might be a white thing, and it might be a combination of whiteness plus growing up out in the middle of nowhere and just not having that modeled for me. But I don't know how many times I've told someone, oh yeah, I live in that neighborhood. And they're like, oh, do you know so-and-so? She lives down the street from me. I'm like, no, I don't know anybody. I don't naturally do that. So you add that to the fact that I'm so cognizant and I don't want to burden you with this and that and all of those things. It makes it, I have to consciously make myself reach out to people, whether they're Black, white, it doesn't matter. To check in regularly it does not come naturally to me, which is bizarre, but also makes sense to me when I think about the trajectory of my life and what was shown to me and modeled for me when I was a child, which is where you learn things, right? So grew up out in the middle of nowhere. So we just didn't do let's take the cookies to the new neighbors, because we never knew if we had new neighbors because they were too far away.
So we started in New York City, and I have an older brother. I know I've said this before. I have an older brother that's 2 years. So like we had, we were what they call I think latchkey young people, where moms went to go work. Mom and dad had separated. And so me and my brother would make our way to school in New York City by ourselves, together, walking together and coming back, that type of situation. And so there was always like young people around. And then in New York, we were very proximal to my other family members. So the cousins on the weekend and, family thing. But then when we left New York City, we went to California from New York City. Broke my heart, tore me apart, because I was a New York girl. I was a New York City girl. And then
that's a big transition. That's a big transition. Yeah.
We get to California and we're in a lily white, wealthy community of people from like what you see on TV, right? And we're the anomaly young people in that community. Thank God my older brother could play sports really good. So, became like the good Black boy who could play sports.
Filling that stereotype,
Well, I mean, and stereotype and reality also, because
right.
He had the skills.
I guess I mean stereotype by the way that's how whiteness might feel like they can engage with him, because he's in the role that whiteness expects him to be in. So and the role that he wanted that made sense for him in whiteness. So like there was two parts of it, because his skills and abilities were excellent. And so there was a benefit to, utilizing the skills and abilities. But that type of community, because there was team involvement in my youth, and I played a little sports too here and there. I did a little soccer, a little volleyball and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So that's my little fun. But we had like that very team and community experience with us. So like,
you meet people on your team, and then you're at everyone's birthday parties, and the school that we went to when I did go to public school, all of the young people from around that area went to that area, and there was a park that we all went to. So it was a very father's knows best community. Even though my mother was a single mother Black woman in that community, there was social young people around us all of the time. So I am very open to having to express myself in my authenticity from the beginning, because as a young Black woman around all of these white folks, if you didn't stand up for yourself, you could be lost or treated in a way that wouldn't be healthy in a developmental period of your life. So
right.
So I have that difference. And as we are having this conversation, it is kind of illuminating some other things that I think is important to have in this conversation, because we have listeners. The reason for us to take this pause and really take a deep dive into the evolution of our relationship, especially in this moment, I want to make this make sense, is because there's so much divisiveness that's happening across the globe. But there's particularly a specific type of divisiveness that's happening in the United States. And as our democracy is being eroded, and as representation is shifting in the way that it's shifting, if people are not figuring out different ways to develop relationships with each other and talk to each other and create a deep dive of connection with one of each other, then the US is going to look the way that it has looked in the past, with a different type of person that has more access to information. So the level of violence that is possible is elevated to a different level. And I was thinking about this. I was actually having a conversation with people in my community. If we're returning to a time where there's like Black codes, or if we're returning to a time of like Jim Crow, or if we're returning to this time of like shadow existence or second citizenship free, you are dealing with a demographic of humans that don't accept that as the same way, because they've experienced life differently.
Right.
And so unless you are figuring out how to be in communication with people, unless you're figuring out, despite your differences, how to hear people, understand what their experiences are, and identify what the common grounds are. And if there are not common grounds, at least be able to hear how the grounds are different, so that you can, figure out a way to develop some type of social relationship. I'm not talking about a relationship where you're developing care and consideration, but care and consideration just for the fact that someone is another human that you should have you should hold some type of dignity for and towards, that type of a thing. And so us taking time to say, okay, this is 100 episodes, we've been having this conversation, our relationship has evolved in a particular type of way, our ability to be more authentic and honest with each other has developed in such an important way. And it's important for us to kind of laugh about that, to celebrate that, but then to also be like, we're modeling what is one of the key essential elements that are necessary in this moment as we're watching all of the shifts happen, particularly in the United States, because the United States offers a global narrative to other places as to like what relationships can and should look like.
Right. Thank you for that. And I actually want to say out loud, as I'm listening to you say that, one of the things that I want to get better at is like you said, remembering people's humanity, even if they can't remember their own. So like one of the things that I've been like struggling with over the past 2.5 years in my very steep learning curve, I was not one of those people that knew what was happening in Palestine before October 7th. So full disclosure, brand new here. And when I started to learn what was happening, I did a deep dive into it, and then got very frustrated and angry at those who refused to see what was happening in Palestine, refused to do what I was doing, which was doing the deep dive. They wanted to stay in there. And I didn't even have, I can honestly say I didn't even have Zionist belief systems. I didn't have to unpack indoctrination. I literally did not know what was happening over there. It was not on my radar at all. So I didn't have that piece of having to unpack something to then relearn something new. I was just learning something new. And as I'm saying this out loud, it's actually helping me kind of get to where I said I wanted to get to in the beginning, which is remembering people's humanity, because I see, I mean, I'm no longer speaking to people in my life that were in my life before October 7th. And when I saw how they handled what was happening, either by ignoring it or by discounting it or by saying it's not true, or there's two sides, or Israel has a right to defend itself, which makes me crazy, I wrote them off. I was just like, I don't have time for this shit. You either are okay with genocide or you're not. And if you're okay with it, I'm done. And in doing that, I forgot about their humanity, even if they had forgotten about theirs. If they're going to say that I'm okay with genocide, which is in my mind what you're saying, if you're saying Israel has a right to defend itself, then to me, you've lost your humanity, or at least a significant portion of it. And is that helping the world at all if I just say, well, you've lost your humanity, so,
right.
I'm done, let me move on.
No, that part, that's like some truth telling right there. That's something really to think about. Like, how is it when there are people that are existing that are so antithesis to your own existence?
Yeah.
You are trying to recognize their humanity. Because when you initially said this statement of when people are not recognizing their own humanity, and I was like, like, how do we make the determination about how somebody is recognizing their own humanity? And I'm hearing in what you're saying is that when you can position yourself to be creating so much harm that you are not being aware of the level of genocidal violence that other people are experiencing in that's when we need to be checking in with ourselves in our human capacity. Like, would I want my entire culture of people, my entire heritage of people to be violently attacked? And then folks saying they wouldn't want their culture of heritage of people to be violently attacked. And because both of us don't want our cultures of people to be violently attacked, we should not be violently attacking each other. It doesn't seem like rocket science.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like, that is the remembering your humanity.
Right.
And remembering other people's humanity. Right. It's saying, I wouldn't want this for myself, and you don't deserve this for yourself. So we don't need to be even getting into it.
We don't need to be doing it at all. Yeah.
But we also need to be in communication with each other so that we can get to that place where we can see each other as other valued human people. I don't know how else to say that, but like, however much I like you, I need to be able to recognize that you have blood running through your veins in the same way that I have blood running through my veins. And you deserve to exist as much as I deserve to exist, however horrible you are. So if we all deserve to exist, then let's get to that and stop being violent and harming each other.
Right.
Let's get to this. Let's get to a conversation. Let's talk about how we're different. Let's say, I'm curious as to how you're thinking like that, because I don't understand. I'm not going to make judgment on it, but I need to have clarity about how you're coming to what you come into.
Yeah.
Because that's important.
You're so much better at that than I am. And I'm identifying that my history with my abuse by my father and how that toxicity, I had to cut him out of my life. I'm feeling, or I'm identifying that that's a pattern of behavior. That's like, if you're toxic, you're gone. That is how I protected myself.
Safety. Yeah, man, that's safety.
Yeah, that's my safety. Critical. And so, I mean, my therapist has said I have a very strong sentinel. I have a soldier that, that protects me from people who are toxic. And so I'm identifying, as I'm hearing you speak, that I behave that same way. That's how I handle anybody. That I don't know that I have ever been in a place where I could say, I hear what you're saying, and I'm going to try not to sit in judgment, but I want to hear more about how you got there, because what are you talking about? You have taught me a lot about how to do that. I don't know that I'm still very good at it. And I do think that there are patterns in my life that have ensconced this sentinel, if the limb is bleeding and you're going to bleed out, just lop it off. Just get rid of it, because that's the way to
Cut it off. Yeah, man.
just cut it off.
I get
So
it.
you're right. That's not necessarily going to get us where we want to be in terms of trying to, and in a lot of ways, as you said earlier, our country, especially in the US, the powers that be, the Epstein class, as you would prefer that we cut each other off, because if we're not
Absolutely.
talking to each other, that
You get
feeds
to
and
catch a wedge.
fits with their intention.
Absolutely.
Because the more divided we are, the less that we can come together and drum them out and get, and the easier manipulated we are. You know, we are, the
You can
easier
go
we
in
are to
fair.
indoctrinate, the easier
when
we
you-
are to,
And those are some of the things, like, we started this conversation talking about what have we learned about each other. So I want to offer some of the things that I've learned about you now that I've had this moment to talk and be thinking about it. And then on our next episode, we can deep dive into some of the things that, as we were actually in each other's presence for a long period of time, like sharing space together, some of the things that we learned about each other in the next episode. But one of the things that I learned, or that I am learning through our relationship and our conversation, is what it means to be intentional about doing something, like, and really be committed to it, and like holding to that commitment.
Okay.
So like I really appreciate that, because when you said, if we didn't make a plan, continue to develop a relationship, would we have continued to develop a relationship? And that's where I'm not good at. Like, I can move through space and be present where I'm present, but making an intentional effort to, like, if you're not here where I'm present, I'm dealing with what's present.
Yeah.
That's all I can deal with.
You're not in front of me, you're behind me. Yeah, I got you.
So I really appreciate the attention in that. And I appreciate the modeling, because we do sit in different positions of power, right? So it is like an opportunity to make sure that connections are being made across, those type of differences. And I appreciate it. So, and then I learned some real fun stuff that I was like, my girl, Diane. There was one thing that I even want to say.
Oh, no, I can't wait.
Tune in.
Well, let's, we're going to carry over the celebration of our 100th episode into the 101st episode, and do a deeper dive, now that we've spent so many days together in space together, which I think that weighs in, when we talk about whether or not we were going to stay in relationship with each other after we stopped working together, those years ago. I think that weighs in because we weren't in proximity to each other. You were in Jamaica and I was here, and we had not, at that point, had not even met in person, so the only relationship we had was virtual. And while that may seem like it makes it easier to stay, checked in with each other because you can just jump on a Zoom or whatever, these past 4 days that we spent together in Charleston really, for me, solidified. So it says a lot about how important it is. We live in this virtual space where we can be in proximity with each other, but not actually be in real life proximity, and how important that is. So,
and we got along, y'all. Spoiler alert, we did get along.
We did. We didn't get on each other's nerves. Maybe not too much. I'll speak for me. You didn't get on my nerves. More will be revealed. Whether or not nerves were touched, we'll see. So stay tuned. All right. So we'll see you on the next episode, and more will be revealed.
Love it.
Why do I give a fuck?
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, as you move throughout your day, continue to ask yourself,
Why do I give a fuck?
Why Do I Give a Fuck is produced in collaboration with Johanna and Diane. Music by Norwegian musician Water. See you next time.